What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Spark to Fire. I'm Landon Rhodes, your host, and today I'm here with my mentor, good friend, entrepreneur, stud, business owner, Boyd Ober. What's up, man?
Hey, good morning, Landon. Glad to be here, brother.
Thanks for coming in, especially during the COVID crisis situation, the pandemic we're dealing with. I appreciate you being willing to sit in the same room with me.
And 6 foot, man.
Yeah, 6 foot. Yep. And then less than 10 people in the whole company, so we're still good.
Yeah, we're good.
But yeah, these are unprecedented times.
They are.
And before we go into talking about the COVID situation, before we go into talking about leadership and chaos, I want to talk about, what qualifies you to talk about this, because you are qualified, in my opinion, and a lot of other CEOs' opinions, to talk about what it's like to lead during chaos. But I want to hear from you what your story was. What made Boyd Ober who he is today?
Wow, that's a deep question, and I appreciate you asking. I think it's always important to kind of understand a little bit of the background and those type of things. But first and foremost, Landon, I think it goes without saying that I don't have all the answers, and I appreciate you asking me for my opinion, but that's really all it is at this point. There's a lot of great leaders out there that I've had the privilege to learn from during times of chaos, during times of uncertainty. At my age, I'm 56, I've been through a couple different things, but from that perspective, you have to learn from those type of things, and you have to look forward rather than back, but you have to learn from the experiences in the back. So first and foremost, my family, if you go back, I think you and I have a lot in common. We both grew up in a rural environment. My dad, who's 81, still is farming today. Him and mom run the operation with my nephew. Yeah. And that's pretty cool to see that fourth generation of entrepreneurship from a farming. And I think that's where entrepreneurship really started from, was agriculture. And I watched him as a young kid. I never knew him to have fear. And that was one of the things. When he made a decision, he made it with confidence. Mm-hmm. And you watch that as you're growing up to see those type of people. And there was a lot of people around him like that. But when I left the farm back in 1982, I fully anticipated that I would go back to that. I thought that was going to be my plan. But having gone through college and going through grad school and getting married and moving to Lincoln in 1987, we started a life down here, and it's been a fantastic community. I've been blessed beyond belief to meet some fantastic people. But I started out at a company called Metromail, and that was way before your time. But Metromail was a direct marketing company, and I really knew nothing about direct marketing from that perspective. But what it was is about a $300 million company when I started there. And I was in the right place at the right time, because 10 years later, we'd been bought and sold three times. It was a $1.6 billion company. So the incredible growth. But one thing that they did that was really interesting is they gave guys like me an opportunity. And they gave me responsibility. They gave me opportunities to try different things and to fail along the way. Not knowing what you don't know. Mm-hmm. You start running divisions, you start taking chances, and we had great success. But that was a time that really allowed me to experiment and to learn. I took a lot of things for granted because success became pretty easy there, right? But in the same sense, I learned a lot. I left there in 2000 and went to a .com company. Wasn't anticipating, but one of my largest client called me and said, "Hey, buddy, I went to a company in San Francisco," and I congratulated him. And his largest client, I'm thinking, wow, I hope we maintain this. And he goes, "That's not it. We want you to join us." And I was not anticipating. I was not planning on it. In fact, I knew my next move at Metromail at that time was going to be pretty good. But I took a swing at it, and I took a swing at it because it got me back into that really what I would call pure entrepreneurial spirit,
just and growth minded. Was that
sky's the limit.
Was that a smaller company at the time?
It was at that point. Ironically, it was 60 some people. They'd hired a bunch of tech people, so it was all VC funded.
Got it.
And so it gave me that spark to go back. But I give my wife a lot of credit for that. We'd been married a few years. We had 3 kids at home. I took a huge pay cut. I had no idea what we were going to do, type of thing from that standpoint. But she trusted in the experience. She trusted in the process and said, let's do it. And that really got those juices flowing again to go back and do something more, what I'm going to call more entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the journey. And then we started Leadership Resources in 2003 after the whole 9/11 thing.
Sure.
And that's been an incredible journey as well.
And so you were kind of finding yourself constantly going back into the fire, if you will, of like, okay, well, this is successful. We've gone from $300 million to $1.6 billion. Mm-hmm. What's next? Right. Yeah. I think that's a really common thing. I feel like entrepreneurs, a lot of people, if they thrive in that startup environment, once it gets big, sometimes entrepreneurs kind of like, I just want to like hop over to the next thing and start like growing that. Like a great example would be Joe Ricketts. Yeah. Joe Ricketts founded and built up TD Ameritrade. And even after selling to Charles Schwab for $29 billion or whatever they sold for, excuse me, I believe, or even after selling to Charles Schwab for I think $29 billion or something along that lines, he is now an entrepreneur back in Omaha. I think he has a pie shop and he's just crushing it with the pie shop. And so I think that's a really good testament to like, what is entrepreneurship? It's constantly wanting to go back to that phase of like when we were growing, we were building, right?
Well, I think quite frankly, the word entrepreneur has bubbled up over the last few years, and it's got a lot of press. This person's an entrepreneur, that person's an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of different versions of business owners, and I think there's a lot of different versions of leaders. But a pure entrepreneur, I don't think I'm a pure entrepreneur. I look at some of these people out there that are just taking huge swings and always looking to reinvent something, and they're not afraid of anything. You know, when I started this company, Leadership Resources, I was 38 years of age, and I had my risk tolerance maybe wasn't what it was when I was 23.
Sure.
I have family responsibilities, those type of things. But a pure entrepreneur seems to always be looking for that next thing to build and sell. And I think, I recommended this book to you a long time ago, and I know you posted it online, but the Building of a Billionaire, I think was the name of it. You remember Bradley Sugar? Mm-hmm. But in there, he talks about the different levels of entrepreneurship. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, Landon, get into business by saying, I'm tired of taking orders. I'm tired of having to do stuff and for someone else. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but I think it gets over glorified. Business is really, really hard. And today, I know we're going to talk about this later, there's a lot of responsibilities falling on business leaders that nobody could have predicted. But I think a lot of people get into business and think, wow, if I can just replace my income, I'll be good.
It's just the start.
Just the start.
It's just the start. And it doesn't stay there.
And a pure entrepreneur doesn't let it stay there.
No.
A pure entrepreneur is thinking about scaling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're willing to risk that just to let it go to the next level. Yeah. For instance, take a pay cut for the next 2 years because they know if they take a pay cut, or the next 2 to 10 years, and they have the thought in mind, like, well, I'm going to invest those resources back in the company because I'll be able to pay myself whatever I want.
They absolutely believe in the future, believe in the dream, and know that whatever risks they're taking, while it may not work out perfectly, it will come back to them. And I think, you had Joey Hausman on the show early on. I think Joey's a local example of just a guy that has zero fear. Now, he may have fear behind the scenes that he never shows, but the guy just goes, hey, let's go. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Oh, I completely see that. And it's interesting because when I interviewed him, I asked him, like, did you have this, kind of a gut instinct killer mentality before your wife was diagnosed with cancer? And he did. He had it far before that. Because I thought it came after. I'm like, I imagine seeing something that horrific of like losing a loved one that's that close to you. Yeah. Literally the mother of your children. And I see that as like, okay, well, you literally have, other than your children, nothing to lose at that point. Yeah. He had that killer instinct way before that happened though. Yeah. And that was interesting to find out because I actually asked him during the show. Yeah. It's like, so where did you get this? He's like, I just always had it. Yeah. And I think his example was, what do I have to lose? My mortgaged house and my shitty vehicle or something like that. Yeah. He had a good example of that. So
I have some good friends that are in an entrepreneurial group, and one of them said a few years ago, he says, well, geez, if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, what are we going to do? We'd have to go get a job, but we're not employable. As an entrepreneur, you can't be employable type of thing. And I think it gets over glamorized, if that's the right word. The real truth of the story is the entrepreneur wants to build something that lots of people get to have an opportunity to be successful in. I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we have is we have visions, we have ideas. Can we build something that other people can bring their passions, their talents, and make it better?
Yeah.
And when that comes together, all good things happen, because there's never been one pure entrepreneur that's done it by themselves. In fact, most of the time, it would fail epically if they tried to do it by themselves.
Yeah. And you'd never hear about them, because
Never.
there would be there'd be nothing to praise, because it would never happen in the first place.
It's always about the people that's part of the team.
I agree 100%. And so I'm curious from the standpoint, you went from this company, and where were you living at the time before you started Leadership Resources? Where were you at?
I was here in Lincoln.
You were here in Lincoln.
No, I was back and forth. I spend 1 week here, and then I'd spend 1 week in San Francisco.
Got it. Okay.
And that's kind of how it came together.
And what was the impetus for starting Leadership Resources? And for everybody that's listening to the show or watching the show, we consider this the spark to fire moment. What was the point to where you're like, I want to change whatever is currently happening in my life. I want to take control of it. I want to take this leap. What was that moment for you?
I don't think it was a moment, Landon. I'm probably a little bit different from the standpoint. I did work in corporate America. I did work in small businesses, and I worked in farm, and I was an employee. I was a part of a team, but I always had that flair for ideas. But one thing that was really important to me, and I look back now, that I didn't maybe realize at the time, was an incredible passion to see the success of other people. That's, when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about, I get to do something to help other people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that was, it was there, but I didn't know this was even a business. So a guy by the name of Bob Bowerly, actually, a great man, good friend today. Bob was our church council president. Bob pulled me aside at church one day, and he said, Boyd, I've been watching you, and I'd like to give you a business opportunity. And I looked at him and he said, Bob, I love you, man, but I'm not selling Amway. And that was my answer to him. I didn't even hear what he was saying. I just said, I'm not selling Amway. And there's nothing against network marketing. There's nothing against it. But I'd been hit up probably, minimum of a half dozen times to sell Amway. I said, Bob, no, I'm not going to do that. He goes, no, it's not Amway. And I kept saying no for 2 years. And finally one day, Bob said, Boyd, would you just take a look at it? I said, okay, I'm traveling a lot. Here's what I'll do. I'll meet you on Saturday mornings, every other Saturday morning at 6 o'clock, and we'll go through whatever you have. So we did. And I started using the system. It was called Effective Personal Productivity. We still offer it today to our clients. We've got different versions of it as well. But effective personal productivity, I will say, changed my life, because I was always a goal setter. Yeah. And goal setting, a lot of people say they're a goal setter, but really understanding the nuances behind it and understanding how the system works was incredibly important. So I started using it, and a couple different stories associated with that. I said, wow, I used this thing called a conference planner. And I had a guy in Chicago reporting to me at the time, and he called me up and he'd talk for, need to be a 5-minute conversation, but he'd talk for an hour and a half. Right. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's got to be a better way. So I'm flying to Chicago one day, and I had this whole list of things to do on my conference planner with him. Mm-hmm. He picks me up at the airport, and we drive to the client's site for his meeting. 20-minute drive. We not only knocked out the entire list of things I had, but we also got into other subjects. 20 minutes later, we just bam, 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 bam. And I said, wow, this saved me hours of time on the phone with you. So that was one thing that sparked me there and said, there's a better way to operate businesses. Right. There's a better way to operate life. And the other was a connection to my values. Yeah. And I remember I was traveling a lot, and traveling's hard in business. Anybody that's been a road
especially
warrior.
Especially your wife and kids.
Yeah. I was traveling, 100 to a couple 100,000 miles a year on an airplane. Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm gone a lot. And I remember sitting on the plane. I was going from Denver to San Francisco, and I opened up my planner and a picture of my daughter. And my boys were there as well, but I looked at my daughter. I said, wow. And I start crying. I got tears in my eyes. And the lady next to me, don't know her. I was sitting in seat 2B, and the lady next to me said, are you okay? And, I gotta be a tough guy. And I said, yeah, I'm fine.
I'm fine. Yeah.
Fine. And but deep and down, I knew it was wrong.
Right.
Deep down, I knew it was wrong. I said, if I keep this lifestyle up, there's a good chance I'll never walk her down the aisle. I don't have the relationships that I should have with my family, and I got to get a better way. So I started using that system, Landon, to help me not organize my business, but organize my life and take control of me. And you cannot lead if you don't take control of yourself.
Right.
So those are a couple things.
Got to clean your
Spark that fire. And then the final one is, once we got going, and we started this in 2003, and the gentleman is still a client today. It's one of our first client, but his wife came up to me about 3-4 months into our process. And she said to me, he didn't even remember what I did, and because it changed my life. But she said, whatever you're doing with, she used his name, will you keep doing it? And I said, well, what are we doing? She goes, I don't know. He's always been a great guy, but he's a better husband. He's a better dad. He's a better business leader today from what he's doing with y'all. That changed my life, because I knew at that point we had something that could positively impact people.
You're changing lives.
And that's what it's all about, changing lives.
Yeah.
Making the impossible possible through people.
You're still doing that today.
Yeah.
And what do you attribute to, you guys have you've not only built, this fantastic company with all these great processes, you have several programs, proprietary. A lot of people are, locally would know you as somebody that helps run EOS or traction for clients, but that's just the beginning. There's so much more that you guys actually have to offer within that. So what did you do to consistently build a culture of innovation within your company? Because I feel like a lot of people, if they're starting off, say, with running EOS, they want to be an EOS coach, or they want to, whether it's effective personal planning, is that right?
Personal productivity, yeah.
Effective personal productivity. If they were just starting off with that, some people would just stay with that. They'd make that their business, and that's what they do. But you didn't do that. You continued to innovate. What did you do to build that culture of innovation at LR?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because innovation really comes through ideation and really comes through being around a lot of different things to spark ideas. At least it does for me, Landon, and I'm sure people get ideas from a lot of different places, but this business gives us an opportunity, and gives me an opportunity to really hang around with some really brilliant people. I've had the opportunity to sit down with, multiple CEOs, either through coaching or through just talking to them and understanding their business. And when you really, truly listen, ask questions like you're doing now, and listen to the answers, there's a lot of brilliance out there. And our buddy Jay Wilkinson says it best, it's R&D. There's not a lot of original ideas, so you need to rip off and duplicate. It's that R&D thing. And Jay Wilk, he's a brilliant dude, but, sitting down with Jay and listening to him about things, it's going to spark ideas. Sitting down with a Mark LeBaron, a Tom Hanning, Tom Smith, the list goes on and on of people that are here that are willing to give their time and energy and learn from them. And I could probably talk for 2 hours about people that positively influenced me. But that you take back to your culture, and it starts with your core values. It starts with how people, when they bring ideas to the table, are received. If somebody brings an idea to the table and it's immediately shot down,
that's it. What's
the likelihood they're going to bring another one?
Next to none.
Next to none. And I know I'm not perfect over the last few years. The first 10 plus years, we were we had a lot of different ideas, and I'd bring different ideas from sessions in. And one day I was walking around the office, and I brought in an idea, and somebody said, red circle. And I'm like, okay, what's that? And come to be told, I was bringing so many ideas into the organization from my interactions that they didn't know whether it was a red circle or an orange triangle. And so it was overwhelming them with ideas. And at that point, where are we going today? Where are we chasing? And that was a real big thing. And I think the authenticity of our culture, the core value, allowed people to bring that up to me and say, Boyd, you're overloading us with ideas.
Right.
And they're trying to help bring those ideas to fruition. That's when EOS really came into play. What I realized as a quote unquote entrepreneur, I had all these ideas, wanted to do different things, bring and employ more people, grow. We weren't taking the time to truly have an effective operational system. And that was a big moment for our organization.
Interesting.
There's a lot of them out there. We love EOS, but there's others out there. And I would say it's an awesome one because we use it as well, but our clients use it. The thing about it is it brings a system of clarity to the organization, a process for people to IDS issues, identify, discuss, and solve them so that you can go about doing your work. Mm-hmm. I have a fundamental belief that I think it's almost 100%. It's high 90s. People come to work wanting to do a great job. I just believe people are coming to work to do a great job. They get to do something they love or they wouldn't be there. We have so many choices. People are miserable because they don't get to do a great job.
Right.
They're not allowed that system. So we had to put in a system of operating our business that allowed everybody to do what they're passionate about, do their job, have authority to make the decisions they need to. And when we did that, it was like turning a light switch on. Mm-hmm. And they kept smiling. We've always had I think a fun place to work.
Right.
In the same sense, people now felt like they were in control of the decisions they could make.
Right.
And it didn't have to come to me. No. That was the biggest bottleneck. If it had to come to me, we're in trouble.
That's the way I look at things now. Yeah. As we're continuing to grow, I think about the same way. Yeah. We just had a meeting right before I walked into this about how do we remove me from the production scheduling process completely? Yeah. Like, how do I not be involved in that in any way? Because at the end of the day, I think I'll slow it down. Yeah. I don't think that it's, me being one extra step in that is unnecessary. I'd rather train you up to the point to where you're taking it on and then you're taking it over and making it better.
See, you're getting that 30 years earlier than I did.
I'm
a slow
I work
learner,
with people like you. It's because I work with people like you, and that's literally what this show. That's half of why I'm doing this show is literally. Yeah. I want more time to sit across from people that have done what I'm trying to do, and I want to learn from them, and I want to know. And this is a prime example. If you can make a phone call to your 27-year-old self, what would you say?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that one. A 27-year-old self. He's just about ready to have children at that point. I would probably tell myself to slow down a little bit, to seek to understand more about the knowledge that I was gaining, to really internalize and understand the knowledge so that I was able to teach that at a younger age, to bring that not only to my kids as they were growing up. I think we've had that opportunity, but to really bring that opportunity to learn more. People have so much to give, seeking to understand that, but really internalizing it. Not just say I know about it. I could spout off something, but I really know about it. And so I can use it to its highest degree.
So going deeper with the individual learning. So give me an example of like a concept. Maybe it's, just give me an example of a concept.
I'll go back to, my days at Metromail, and, I took for granted there, I'd asked to go on and get my MBA, and they said, no, you don't need to do that. We'll teach you everything you need to know. And they taught me a lot, but I really didn't learn that there was a operational model behind the business. I just thought if I worked harder If I was there at 6, if I worked all night type of thing, I just put more energy into it, we'll be successful. Well, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you can do that. I think when you get a few more years behind you, you say, yeah, that's probably not the best way. The best way is to really learn it so you can teach it. And that's the multiplying factor. Mm-hmm. And, people come to you all day long to say, what do you think about this? Well, I can give them an answer. But the real value is, let's talk through and say, what do you think about it? And where are you going with this? What's your objective, so that we can help you solve it in a more positive way, that you learn from it rather than just answer it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And, it's hard for me to say slow down, because you get your motor. I'll go back just a little bit here. I know it was a tragedy with Kobe Bryant passing, but I saw an interview with him. And somebody asked, what would you do different if you could do it over again? And his answer, I thought, was phenomenal from the standpoint. He goes, guys like me don't look about doing things differently in the past. We look at doing things differently in the future. What did we learn, and what are we going to do in the future with our knowledge? And I think that's the critical thing. So that's one of the things, quite frankly, from a behavioral standpoint, over the last few years, I've really learn from that to say, slow down, understand what people are wanting to do, allowing them to have more reign to make that decision. And when I started doing that, the business just kept getting better and better.
Yeah.
And people are so wildly talented. We got an amazing team, and they're fighting like heck right now to make sure they're giving that to other people, giving the hope and courage to fight through things. But that's the coolest thing, is when you see the team operating without you.
There's nothing better.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than that feeling, in my opinion. That was a pretty steep learning curve, I would say, from, previously, where I had been, you're involved in everything in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And you were, like, back when you started the company, 03, right?
I took out the trash.
You took out the trash. Still do. Still do. Right? And
if it needs to.
Yeah. But transitioning from being the guy that, or the gal that does everything, mm-hmm. to empowering the other people to do it is such a key step. Do you still see entrepreneurs today that are unwilling to make that shift, no matter how old they are? Or is that an age thing, or do you think that's just a mentality thing?
I think it's a mentality. I think it's a natural behavior thing. There's a trust factor involved. There's trust of everything. Do you trust yourself enough to allow somebody else to make a mistake? And realizing that you make some along the way. I mean, I made so many. I made some today. I made some in this conversation. You're going to make mistakes, but you can't dwell on them. Mm-hmm. Well, we got to let other people make mistakes as well, so that they can learn. That's the best way we learn is, obviously success is a great way if we learn from our success as well. But sometimes those things that don't go well, we can learn a lot in terms of what not to do.
Quickly.
And if we're always trying to keep them from making mistakes or punishing them because they do, that's not going to help your culture grow. Ironically, I think it's a mental game. I always talk about golf being a mental game. It's a 6-inch game. It's between your ears.
Right. So
is business.
Right.
For the most part, it's between your ears in terms of not just your knowledge, but your connection with people, your ability to really connect with people and trust people and trust yourself. I ran around the office for years with an affirmation. I delegate because I want it done right. I'd say that over and over again to myself. I delegate because I want it done right. Well, if you break that sentence down, I'm empowering other people to do things that can do it better than me. And 2 years ago, I said to my senior team, I said, my goal this year is to develop you enough that you can run this business as it is today without me. Mm-hmm. And I said it about 5 times, and they finally came back and said, Boyd, are you leaving? I said, no, I'm not leaving.
Go anywhere.
I don't want to leave. I want to be able to take whatever's next and bring whatever's next to our business and allow the current team to run what we have and grow that. And then what's next? So I think it's really a big trust thing.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Mm-hmm. And you had, I think what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of transition into the advice. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you don't think you have all the answers, but what a lot of people may not know, some people do know, they're watching this. You do have a lot of answers, though, and you have a lot of
I have my answers.
You have your answers, which have helped me in a tremendous way since I've got to meet you. So I want to know, what advice would you give to somebody that wants to go out and build their own business? You've worked with entrepreneurs. You have more exposure to entrepreneurs than most human beings. So what would you tell somebody that says, I want to go start my own thing?
Yeah. Well, it really depends on what it is and what you're looking at doing. There's a lot of franchise opportunities that have a business model in place. If it's that type of situation, really research the franchise opportunity. Talk to people in it that have been successful. Talk to people that haven't been successful in that model. You can learn a lot from it. Eric Dinger, a good friend of mine, when he sold his ad agency, he was looking at different things to do. Eric went around and talked to people about different success, things that they've done, things that didn't work well. And I thought that was really a smart thing to do, because he's really gaining the knowledge before he jumped in.
Right.
Reality is that opportunity, it's kind of like fast food. You drive down the road, that opportunity will be there again in a week, be there again in a month. Take your time to understand that, okay? So that's if there's a business model like a franchise opportunity there for you. If it's purely a new idea for you, what I see a lot of people do, they have this idea and they get closed and they try to solve it all by themselves and think somebody's going to steal their intellectual capital.
Right.
And the reality is, nobody knows it as well as you do. They're not going to be able to steal your intellectual capital and move it forward. Now, there's maybe scenarios that could happen in technology, but I'm talking in general.
Proprietary tech.
Proprietary stuff, ideas that you have, something you want to do to change the world. Yeah. Trust your centers of influence. Take them aside and say, I'm thinking about this business. I'm going about this. This is a problem I'm going to solve. And when I solve this problem, here's the impact it's going to be. I don't know how to get there yet, but what do you think about that? Is that something that needs to be solved? And do a little research from that through your centers of influence or other smart people. And if you spend a little time doing that, you can probably save a lot of pains along the way.
Right.
The other thing that I think is important to do is really realize who your circle is. I'm blessed with a lot of really good people that are willing to hear anything, but do you have a good attorney that you can rely on and bounce things across? Is your banker behind you? So many people think, well, I don't need a banker, I can go out and get VC. Well, you can, but you're going to give up a lot. Will your banker help you? And bankers are there to be the conservative voice as well.
Sure.
So you got to balance all those type of things. So there's a lot of resources. There's small business associations, the chambers, all these companies have a lot of resources. But then once you get started, I think some of the things that have been most influential is getting involved in peer groups. You jumped in the one with us. Mm-hmm. I'm in a different group. There's a lot of them around, but getting involved in a peer group that can help you through the ups and downs, it's huge. Just as much to balance the success as it is to balance the challenges. And like you say, don't jump off the ledge. There's been worse things in life. Let's figure out how to address it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the peer group thing is so true and so real for me in the last year. I feel like I had that ever since I started to work at Trade-offs. Those guys were hardcore entrepreneurs because they're the three that started are hardcore entrepreneurs, obviously, but then even the subset, like the brokers and the consultants, they run their own business, they run their own book as well. Yeah. So I think I was kind of thrown into that earlier than most, at 21, 22, 23 timeframe. And learning, how they operated their daily lives, like watching guys run their own business inside of a franchise and say, well, today I'm going to go work out at 9 a.m. and then I'm going to come to work and I'll probably work from 10 to 3 and I'll go home and go, that's it. And then maybe I'll work it from 7 to 10. And I saw that and I was just blown away by that.
Yeah.
That is not what I had grown up. That is not the lifestyle I grew up with. And it's not the lifestyle I saw at corporate America when I worked at Lindsay. And that was attractive for sure. That was really interesting for me to see that people could set their own schedules and do their work on their own time.
Yeah. The reality is when you get into business, you work more than you ever did for someone else. And, it's a passion, it's a love, and
it doesn't feel like work though.
Well, I have that statement. I get to go to work.
Get to go to work.
I don't have to. I get to. And that's a mindset thing. And, when you wake up in the morning and so many people, I think prior to this whole COVID thing, we're going, I have to go to work. My job's a grind type of thing.
Right.
I think there's a lot of people right now going, wow, I'd love to go back to the office.
Love my job.
And I love my job. I love the opportunity. And then kind of jump back a little bit, Landon. One of the things, as somebody gets into the business world, trust the processes are there. I was always, I'm going to reinvent it. And I think a lot of guys that have maybe that more visionary or entrepreneurial flair, always trying to reinvent. There's a lot of things out there that are really well done that you can just use them. Don't always try to reinvent them. And the other thing that I think has been huge for me over the years is while we're in the business, I hired a coach in my 3rd year of business. And I've had one for 15 years.
Really?
Yeah. And most people don't know that because we're in the business of providing coaching.
Right.
I believe it was one of the single most important things that I did because being in a leadership role within a business is lonely. There's a lot of decisions, a lot of things that are going on in people's minds today as a leader that, should I take this to my senior team yet? It may impact them. How are they going to react? So we start doing this ping pong in our head about different ideas. And we don't have an unbiased opinion that we can bounce across.
That's so important.
And so when we have somebody that's unbiased, you can bounce these across them and allow them to listen and hear. A coach is not there to tell you what to do. A coach is there to help you uncover your path to go and help guide you a little bit from it. So, but that was important for me.
That's huge too. Having that unbiased third party, I have that in the last 2 years. I've kind of uncovered and found those people that I know I can bring anything to, and good, bad, or indifferent of just, listen, what do you think I should do in this scenario? Having that availability is everything. Yeah. I mean, you need to pay somebody and if you could find somebody to do that for you without being paid, that's great. But if you pay some that, it is worth every dime to have that person to be able to call anytime and be like, hey, this is happening. What the hell should I do? Because you're constantly finding yourself in those situations. It never stops. Yeah. If you're running a business, you're always going to I feel that you're never just going to have all the answers. So you need to find.
Nobody does.
No. And your coach may not either, but at least your coach could at least help you walk through this current one, because most of the time when you're calling them about something abrupt like that, it is because it's urgent.
Yeah, it is. It's time sensitive. You got to have that open line. I tell all my clients and our team when they're dealing with people, your cell phone doesn't have to be on all the time. I don't want our team's cell phone to be on all the time. I think it's unhealthy for them. Mm-hmm. But if one of our clients needs us during times like today and other times, I had a client call me one time. He was driving down the road going from Nebraska to Colorado, and he was working through all this stuff in his head. It was a Saturday morning, probably by 9:30, 10 o'clock. He says, hey, do you have some time? I said, yeah, I do. Yeah. And just worked through it, 20 minutes on the phone. That gave me some clarity on what I'm thinking. And he processed the rest of it out. I want them to have that reliance, not like a crutch. That's not what it's there for. But if you're processing through stuff, who do you go to that is unbiased and is there for you? Yeah. And that's what a coach is for. I mean, you played athletics. Yeah. I played athletics. Some of my favorite times is when I went to my coach and said, I'm struggling with this. What do you think? Right. Well, maybe my jump shot was off. Well, tuck your elbow in. Right. Yeah, I couldn't see it. Right. Right. You're executing on a daily basis. You need somebody that can scope in, from that 10,000 foot view and be like, I see all these other things around you.
this is what you're looking at. You're looking at the 6-foot view right now.
Guys that play golf with me wish I would bring a coach with me all the time for that. Just every shot, Boyd, have the coach tell you what.
Just have him align your hips real quick, pointing down the fairway. That's great. So let's kind of switch gears here a little bit, talking more specifically about the coronavirus COVID pandemic. What have you seen as far as like people coming to you on a broad scale? I don't want you to name any names, but I want to hear what have you heard, and what have you heard so far, and like what advice do you have to anybody that's dealing with this specifically, that's very affected? Say hospitality is a big one.
Yeah, you know, and I dabble in the hospitality industry with some different things, but you know, first and foremost, my thoughts and prayers are with all those folks. You know, there was a lot of things out of their control, and that's a terrible feeling to have, is when it's completely out of your control, and you know something bad's going to happen, but it's out of your control. And so our thoughts and prayers are there with those folks, as well as the front line. And there's a lot of front line out there. We think about the doctors as nurses, and that's absolutely important. But people are going to work, grocery stores. We still have to have groceries. You know, we still have to have, you know, gas, those type of things. So people are out there working, but, you know, being safe and listening to the advice of people. But again, thoughts and prayers to all those people. Go back to your question, Landon, regarding what we've heard, what we've seen. Obviously, some industries are much more impacted than others, but not everybody is. So my advice always goes back in terms of approach this situation with as much emotional intelligence as you can. And what I mean by that is realize that everybody, even if their business is going well right now, everybody has things in their life that are not going well. So, I could go on and on about how I think COVID's going to impact me. Well, most people don't really care. I don't mean that wrong. I just mean that most people don't want to hear your problems all day long. So it's not a time to just dump your problems other than the people that are there for you from your confidant standpoint. But realizing everybody's got something going on in their life can kind of equalize that play. And then asking, how can I help you? What's going on with you? How can I help you? And when you put it in that word, what is it that we can help you with today? What can we process through today? Is much more powerful than going down a negative trail. So from that perspective, one of the things that, you know, we will talk to a lot of leaders about is, I use this, there's two different pieces of content. One I borrowed from my partner, Dan Sedor, he's been a brilliant guy to work with over the years. He talks about 10-10-10. And it's an interesting concept from the standpoint of when you're making decisions. What's the impact of this decision in the next 10 days? Okay. If I make this decision, what's the impact in the next 10 days? And I'll use a couple examples. Then what's the impact in the next 10 months? Okay. And then what's the impact in the next 10 years? And if you can think about your decision from that perspective, it adds a lot of clarity, and it adds a lot of sitting back and saying, okay, what really could happen here? So let's say, you know, you're faced with something, you got to let people go. And a lot of people have right now. Well, what's the impact in the next 10 days? Well, it's helping us from a cash flow standpoint. Everybody's getting unemployment. That all feels good. Right. What's the impact in the next 10 months? Well, we lost a lot of talent. Let's say, hypothetically, it takes a year for somebody to get up to speed in your business. Right. So now you just let a bunch of people go that you have to replace in 4 or 5 months. Business comes back. Well, now I got to retrain all these new people. I'm a year behind again, so I'm behind my competition at that point. What's the impact in 10 years? Well, I've lost all this trust. Now, I'm not saying people weren't forced to let people go. Don't get me wrong there. I'm not trying to say people made a mistake there. No, but I think it's one of those things that when you think about it in that perspective, 10-10-10, it gives you an opportunity to maybe put a little reflection on it before you pull the trigger.
Right. And then you start exploring different financial options of what it looks like if
Right.
you do have to replace somebody versus retain them.
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, a lot of those conversations are happening right now about, we just lost a third of our revenue. We just lost 2/3 of our revenue. How am I supposed to pay these people? Oh, I can't. That means I either have to go in debt before, and assuming that this relief thing is coming, that'd be great. The CARES Act, like I believe that that's going to happen.
It
for
is.
us, and it's on its way. But the timeline of which that'll happen, I don't know. I think a lot of people,
It's out of our control.
It's out of our control, right? So I look at that as, what can we control? I'm a big believer in, try not to focus on what you can't control, focus on what you can.
Yeah.
And one thing I know from an employee perspective, having been an employee before, I heard this on social the other day. It was, right now, I think it's important for both employees and bosses to be empathetic to each other's situations.
That's the EQ.
As an employee, you have to understand, if you're an employee out there somewhere, you have to understand that your boss is likely going through one of the craziest, unprecedented, horrible times in business that they've ever seen, especially if they're in hospitality and other non-essential industries, quote unquote, not essential, right? What the government declares. And there's two options. You can start looking at this from a perspective of, this company's clearly going under. I think I'll jump ship, swim into a different ship, and then try and get on maybe a bigger ship or a more stable ship that's heading for clearer waters. Or option B, you can show a sense of loyalty and a sense of dedication to your boss and to the firm by saying, where are the buckets? Let's start bailing this thing out. Let's what can I possibly do to make your life easier in the next 6 weeks? Is it not take a paycheck? The loyalty you would build with that supervisor or that owner, there's nothing better than that feeling. And I know obviously that those people are in a position to where they probably can't do that as well. But if you're trying to get ahead, I think about this from trying to bring the positive spin to this. If you are trying to get ahead of your colleagues and you're gunning for this top position in the company, you want more respect, you want more responsibility, which leads to higher income. These are the opportunities for you to step up and show how just able you are to handle these horrible situations and step in.
Yeah. And I think, Landon, there's all kinds of different scenarios that we can paint. The reality is everybody's situation is different. And that's why I always say everybody's going through some different version of something. Mm-hmm. You may not know that employee that, really loves the culture, really loves everything about it and wants to step up, just found out their spouse is pregnant. Mm-hmm. You got this going on. There's all kinds of different scenarios. So again, it goes back to, in my mindset says, always look at it from what somebody else is going through. Should the employee look at it from what the boss is going through? Absolutely. Should the boss look at it from what the employee is going through? Absolutely. Thinking about it from other people's perspective is empathy. And thinking about it with asking questions is really a good way to understand scenarios today. That doesn't mean going into 45-minute conversations every day about how you're feeling. What can I do for you today? Is there one thing I can help you with? Right. So one of the things that I'm challenging a lot of our clients on and a lot of the people I associate with is I'm asking them to put a time frame on this thing. And I'm asking them to think about it from a standpoint, I don't know when this is going to be done. And I don't even know what done looks like, quite frankly. Yeah. I have it in my mind, but I want them to write down what time frame do you think this is going to be kind of resolved for us? Okay, let's say it's 8 weeks. What does it look like in 8 weeks then? What does your business look like? What does your life look like? Write down 2 or 3 things. Never really go past 3 because the mind doesn't process much more than that. Right. Okay. So get those top 3 things down. Say, well, you know what? We're going to have 30% less clients. Okay. Write it down.
You just lost 30 revenue.
30% type of thing. We're 20% less in employees, whatever it might be. We've built processes that can deal with virtual, whatever it might be. Right. What are some pros and what are some challenges? But write those things down and then look at it with a new lens and say, okay, how can I make sure that's either going to happen or I'm going to make it better? So what are 2 or 3 what I call high payoff activities you can do today to impact that in a positive standpoint? Okay. So what I mean by that is high payoff activities are really 20% of your time that drive 80% of your results.
Right.
So if I'm looking to build trust with the employees that I'm there, what can I do today? What can I communicate with them today that's going to build trust for the future? Mm-hmm. Thinking about things that's in your control. You said it a little bit ago, and it was brilliant. What's in my control to do?
Right.
My kids were sitting here today. They would repeat this because I'm pretty adamant about it. When I wake up in the morning on any given day, I don't worry about what Donald Trump is doing. I just don't. I don't worry about what the Senate's doing. I don't worry about Congress. I don't worry about what Pete's doing. Okay? I respect the man that's leading our state. I respect the man that's leading our country, but I don't worry about that. I worry about what's in my control to do.
I do the exact same thing. And I think by default, yeah. It's never even entered my mind that, waking up and worrying about, imagine Hillary won for president. Worrying about that, as I would worry at the very beginning, would be waste of my time.
Yeah. There's a great book. I can't remember the author off the top of my head. It's called Purpose Driven Life. It's a spiritual book. But in there, he talks about 95% of what we worry about is out of our control. And when we put that in perspective, even today, it is so much not in our control about what the president's going to do, when COVID's going to end type of thing. But you know what's in my control? I can carry hand sanitizer with me. In fact, there's a bottle right down there.
Yeah, we
saw
all
when I brought in.
We all sanitize. The studio's sanitized.
I hadn't thought about that before all this happened, but it's in my control.
Yeah.
What else is in my control? I can reach out to clients, whether they're struggling or not. What can we do for you? Mm-hmm. How can we help you? This is not a time to say, here, pay us more, do that type of thing. This is a time to build trust, and it's a great example to say, what am I learning from this? So I think one of the things, and go off on philosophical things again, one of the things I think that could be learned in this environment today is this whole thing I call instant gratification. Our world has been built on it. And if people say, well, what do you mean by that? I can drive down almost any road in America and get a meal within 30 to 45 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. It's instant gratification. Is the food good? Well, it tastes good. Yeah. Is it good for you? Probably not as much. They're doing a better job. I mean, you can get some great salads at a lot of these restaurants now. In the same sense, what tastes good? The fries.
Ice cream.
The ice cream. They taste good. It's instant gratification. So therefore, then we do those things. But I think what this COVID is going to teach us a lot is it's going to teach us the world doesn't have to move quite as fast as we are moving, and not everything has to be instant gratification. I can get gratification out of making a meal with my wife. And I did say that, honey, so you can hold me to that.
Let the record reflect.
I don't let the record reflect unless we can scratch
Boyd
that later.
Boyd is cooking with his wife.
Yeah, but there's gratification in terms of making a meal together as well. Still want to support our restaurants, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I want to do that. But how can we slow down to enjoy more of it? The other piece of it is, one of the things that's causing a lot of pain right now is the instant gratification of spending. We all spend too much at different times.
Yep.
But if we could learn from this to say, we are going to earmark a certain amount of money to put back in cash reserves so that we can overcome some of these pandemics. And keep in mind, this doesn't happen very often. I called my dad and I said, he's 81. I said, Pops, have you ever been through something like this before? And he goes, never. He goes, this is something completely new for me. I've seen a lot of things, but it's unprecedented. Yeah. He said, the closest I can get is the Great Depression that my parents went through. And I said, well, what did they tell you about that?
Yeah.
He said, they told me how hard it was, the amount of unemployment. He said they felt like they were lucky. They didn't have any money, but they felt like they were lucky. They were living on a farm, and they had some roosters, and they had some chickens, and they could grow some vegetables. So they had something to eat. Right. He said a lot of people didn't have anything to eat. So again, it's all perspective, but it slowed them down. And I think that generation, and I watched a movie. You ever seen Hacksaw Ridge?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh, I watched.
Phenomenal
And I think God brought in my life this weekend because of one reason. He said, "Boyd, I want you to think differently. Times might be tough,
Right.
but that was really tough.
That was some hard
What
times.
those people were going through, a Great Depression, the wars like that.
1917. Have you seen 1917 yet?
I have.
And
Unbelievable.
I thought of the exact same thing. Those kids are 18, 19
Right.
years old. What does an 18 and 19-year-old have to worry about today?
Yeah.
What does a 27-year-old have to worry about today? Not
Right.
even
I can't
close.
go see my friends.
Not even close to what those guys were dealing with.
Yeah. Those guys were tough.
They were the next level.
Unbelievable.
Like we are weak compared to what those guys were dealing with on a daily basis.
I've never been that tough in anything in life. I just,
And that is a natural process of going through really, really hard times as you get hardened. And I think that is another positive that will come out of this, is the fact that there's going to be a couple different things. I think that you'll see probably kind of your fly-by-night type entrepreneurs that were just in it because it was kind of cool. And they were kind of dabbling in it. And then you have the people that are dead, bought in, like, this is my life. I am giving everything I have for this.
This is an opportunity.
It's an opportunity for them because they're not going anywhere anyway. They don't have any other choice.
Not a chance.
What did you say earlier? Unemployable.
Yep. Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. Like that is where I think there's gonna be a lot of opportunity there. And that's how people that, if you are trying to run a successful firm, you are trying to grow something, look at companies like Coca-Cola.
Yep.
Coca-Cola was formed during the war.
Yep.
And they had opportunity to, they had an opportunity just like everybody else to have, their industry shut down, but they pivoted and they found a way to make Coca-Cola the number one drink that was served. And they created such a demand that the veterans that were out there serving, they demanded it so much that they were building plants near their bases.
Yeah.
And so they, and their sales just exploded. If you guys want to look that up, it's an excellent story. But, but that is a prime example of somebody who built something in the darkness. They built something in the chaos. And I think what you're going to see out of this is you're going to see other companies that rise.
Amen.
And just
there's going to be
explode.
some incredible opportunities out there, and there already are.
Yeah.
I said to our team the other day, had this happened 5 years ago, it would have been of epic proportions as it is today. Number one, we changed our business model. It's a much stronger relationship, trust with our clients, partner for a long time. Yeah. And that doesn't say they can't live without us, but they can be better with us. And that's an important place to be in any service environment. Mm-hmm. The other piece is when you think about technology, we're 100% cloud. We're one type of system. We're all Apple computer. So everything is consistent. So while we had been delivering virtual, we went 100% virtual for all our clients, coaching, facilitation of meetings, strategic planning in a week.
Think about what that did for you on a national scale.
Oh, the opportunity is incredible.
You forced yourself, and we did the same thing at Grindstone. Yeah. Everybody works remote until production days, which is today, which we have the team here. Yeah. But we did the exact same thing. And I thought about that in a big way of like, think about what this does from your flexibility of saying, oh, well, we can only be effective at LR locally because we can physically see and touch our people. This changes that.
Yeah. And we've had clients in Colorado, clients in Texas, clients around the country in spots, but this gives us an opportunity to build on something we've become really, really good at. The development that we give people through virtual now in our own content is, electronic is exponentially an opportunity compared to what it was.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to share, back to kind of advice or thoughts for leaders, and I would call it more thoughts. They have to do what they deem is appropriate in their world. But it comes back to how we're making decisions. And a lot of the world, as we've matured from a command and control environment that I grew up in under my dad, what dad said is what I did, right? Okay, that was command and control. That was the military. Now, all of a sudden, we become consensus in a lot of ways.
Right.
But there's 3 different C's that we use in that. There's the command, there's the consult, and there's the consensus. And when you think about those type of things, I think the one thing that leaders really want to do today is be crystal clear on what kind of decision this is. If we're making a decision and I've led everybody to believe that it's a consensus decision, but deep down in my mind, I've already made a decision. It's a command. I've already made it because I have to. It's my role. I've misled them, and I'm going to jeopardize trust. So now more than ever is a time that if you as a leader say this is a command decision, make it and own it, but let your team know, hey, I value you. This is one of those I have to make. There's others that I need to consult with certain people. I'm consulting with 2 or 3 people on a couple of different things. I'm consulting with you. At the end of the day, I will make this decision. And there's others, no, this is still consensus. It's okay. And if we're clear about that, we can really build trust.
Wow. That is so. I'm just going to relay this back to you so I really understand it. You're commanding somebody to do something, obviously very clear. You have to do this, and this is the law.
This is the decision we've made, or I've made.
I have made this decision.
Yeah, we have to do this as an organization.
And consult is, listen, I think we should consult about this, and I'm going to so explain the difference between the consult and consensus, because I think the command's obvious, but I think where people would get a little bit of a gray area is those two. So explain the difference between those.
So consult type of thing is right now, let's say a lot of people are looking at all this stuff that's coming out with the payroll protection plan.
Sure.
I may want to go to my finance person. I may want to go to a couple, 3 of my leaders and say, this is what we're thinking from a standpoint. We're looking at all the different options. I'm going to consult on you. I want you to read through this. Here's where I'm thinking at this point. What are you seeing that I'm missing at this point? Can you consult with me? Can you give me some of your opinions so that we can make a better decision? At the end of the day, as a business owner with my name on the line with any loan or anything like that, I have to make the command decision or the control decision that I'm going to either do it or not, but I'm consulting with you as my advisors to say, what am I missing? What are you seeing?
Right.
And I think that's an important thing. Now, consensus, I'll go back to Pops a little bit. I was blessed. Mom and Dad were great for me. They gave me a great home and all these things. And I laugh back at some of the things I learned from both of them. But Pops came back one time from I think a school council or church council or something like that, school board or church council. And for some reason, I remember him talking to me about this. And he goes, I asked him how it was. And he says, well, Boyd, this is one of those lessons that you'll learn sometime. If you really don't want to make a decision, put the idea out to a board. Take it to a council. And let them deliberate it. It'll last forever. And he's an old farmer, right? So he's just like used to making decisions. Command. But if you really don't want to make a decision, send it to committee.
Right.
And so consensus. Let's go back to that one. I had to throw that one in there. But the consensus side of life is really, this is how we're making a decision. So I'll give you an example. I did research on bringing in a wellness program to our organization. We're 20 people. It's a little disruptive because most wellness programs are designed for big companies.
Sure.
I want to bring something to a smaller company and say, can we be a little disruptive? Can we learn about it? So I've done some research on it. And what I did is I wrote out my summary, my executive findings to it. It was my rock for the quarter, basically.
Got it.
And I sent it out to the team and I said, this is how we're going to do this. If 2/3 of everybody votes that they want to participate in this and move forward on it, we'll move forward as an organization. But if you say you don't, if it's less than that, we'll pass on this particular opportunity. So I shared with them what the rules for the decision were. 2/3, it ended up passing like at 90%. People said, yeah, we want to participate in it. But now I know everybody's on board. So that's a consensus type of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Awesome. Makes a lot of sense. And thank you for explaining that. I think that is really helpful for me. I took a lot away from that. I mean, I'm going to, because I feel like what I've gotten in the habit of doing sometimes is I'll make it seem like a consult or consensus type of thing, but in reality it's a command in my head. And it's a decision that I was more or less putting off making, but I just needed to say, this is the direction we're going. And I'm making that a thing. So that helps a lot. So thank you for that.
I think you'll build a lot more trust. You'll find that when you name it and claim it, and you have the confidence of it, and a leader has to have confidence.
Sure.
And you have to believe in what you're doing, and sometimes you have information not everybody does.
Right.
I.e. your own equity in this. It's what you're going to invest type of thing. But you build trust by saying, we may not all be 100% behind this, but this is what I believe we need to do, and I'm standing behind that at this time. So
I'm going to close with this. I heard this the other day, and it just really struck home with me. And it was a quote from, I think it was a quote from Andy Frisella's podcast. And he said, you're seeking opportunities or having opportunities unveiled to you is not an ability. It's a choice. You have to seek out, you have to make a decision that you're going to look for the good in a situation.
Yeah.
It's not something that, I'm just not a positive person. I just don't think like that. It's a choice to think positively of, we're going through this horrible situation, but this positive can come out of it. And I think that's a really important way to think now, a mindset shift for anybody that's going through chaos right now with COVID.
Yeah. The number one gift that we were given in humanity is sometimes a curse as well.
Choice.
And that's choice. And you think about the opportunity every day you wake up and you have a choice to live it to your fullest, or you have a choice to go through it like Eeyore. And what do you want to be known for? Mm-hmm. And it's not that everything's perfect, rose-colored glasses. It's you have a choice to address things in a way to make it more positive. You have a choice to do whatever you want to do. We have a choice where we want to go out to eat. And sometimes just having the courage to make that choice, take that next step, is the best thing you can do. We don't know what's going to happen. None of us do. We're given this moment to do something. Make the choice to move forward. I happen to be born on March 4th, and it's the only date in the calendar that is a command, March 4th. And I think that's something we all need to look at is when we're making a choice. Mm-hmm. Choose to move forward versus moving backwards.
Right.
Sometimes you go sideways to avoid problems, but make a choice to move forward.
Yeah.
And it's the greatest gift that we have.
Boyd, thank you, dude, for coming in today. I really appreciate your time and attention. I know you've got a lot of different fires going on. I know that there's constantly things that are coming up on your radar, things you got to help other people with. That's why you're here for them.
It's my pleasure, Landon.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. And guys, I'm sure this is a huge note-taking episode for everybody. Go back through, re-listen to this podcast, and really listen to the tactics that Boyd shared with us today, because I think they're invaluable. I got a lot out of today's podcast. And if you guys want to find us on social, we're at Spark to Fire Podcast. We'll be sharing all the short form content from this episode. And please leave a review and leave a rating and write a review, because that is how we get more attention on the platforms. That's how we get more listeners, and we share this message with more people. Thank you again for coming on today. And as usual, guys, keep striking.